guys, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, my name is Alejandra Montante. I am celebrating Fibromyalgia Awareness Month, but for this week I am targeting more of the mental aspect of it, also due to it being Mental Health Awareness Month. So in the first video that I had made, it was depression and then anxiety and then PTSD, and today's video it's going to be about borderline personality disorder. So I have BPD, meaning borderline personality disorder. What that looks like, I will explain it on later on in the video, but what I really want you to see me as is somebody who loves to try to grow plants. And I say try because I definitely do not have a green thumb. You can see my little garden and they're kind of dying right now. I want you guys to see that I have a sense of humor and that I have aspirations and that I have a really big heart for my dog and that I'm a outgoing as much as I can be person, and that I love my entire family no matter how devastating it can be sometimes, or we've had very troubled history, that I love children. Like thinking about the less fortunate children, the children who've been through abuse and just very awful things in their life, immediately brings me to tears. That I'm somebody who loves video games and hasn't really played video games in a while because they're all indie and they're all PC games and they're all horror games. I'm somebody who loves watching movies, comedies, horror movies especially. I love watching shows. I love elephants, and I'm just a friendly person to be around. So how I would like to describe borderline personality disorder, it's not being in full control of yourself, but being heavily aware of your behavior. It's like other people are taking over your body and you're yelling at them to stop, and you're asking them why did they answer that way or why did they say that. And it's like having a whole unstable family in your head, one of them being very mean to you and one of them being very mean to everybody around you. Usually we do have somebody who protects us, depending on your childhood and obviously your traumatic incidences that you've had throughout your life. I wish a lot of the times that I didn't do certain things, or I didn't say the way I said it, or I didn't show facial reactions the way I did. I still struggle with that one a lot. I do roll my eyes and I do give smirks when they're not necessary, and I do feel bad because I don't know that I'm doing them, and they majority of the time escalate situations that shouldn't be escalated because of my facial reactions. For somebody who doesn't have it, I'm obviously in a better place in my life to be able to react on how I would like to react and say the things without any hesitation that I want to say. And that's not because in the beginning it comes from an intense fear, but this fear came from a childhood trauma, and this one fear has absorbed my entire life, and it made me do things or say things the way a child would, or react how an adolescent would, or how a young adult would. And what I've learned, I don't know if it's true for everybody, but how I would like to describe it is, it's all of me who doesn't trust me, who doesn't trust present Alec, because I've made bad mistakes, I've trusted the wrong people, I've gone through life where love is hard, where Mom and dad didn't react the best. Brother and sister called me names. Friends controlled me. Friends abused me. Relationships also very abusive. And throughout my life, I just did a really hard pivot of my life when the trauma happened. And at that point, I didn't know who I was. I really didn't, because you build yourself up to a certain point where you think that's exactly who you are. And by that happening, all of me honestly couldn't trust me living anymore. But to backtrack, I've always had borderline personality disorder. I just didn't know it. It wasn't diagnosed yet. But as young as I can think of, I would see myself from a passenger seat or an audience at a theater and see the movie going and see my driver going. I wasn't in the driver's seat. I wasn't the one directing the show. I wasn't in charge of anything, but I saw exactly what was going on, and I couldn't react on how I thought was much more better than what my personality was about to do or say. And it might sound like it's very vicious, but let me give you an example of my child personality. She gets so excited around certain people, and especially around certain conversations, and she just flourishes on that. But when she's placed in a situation that requires me to think, she plays dumb. She's just like, I don't know, because she doesn't want to get it wrong. And see how I said that? That's exactly how it would have been said, and it would have been said through my eyes as well. I communicate a lot through expressions. Like I said earlier, I have no control over those, and they come through. A lot of the times, everybody loves that child side, right? But it's not very equipped to have communications with professors or anybody higher up. She just shuts down, and she doesn't want to get in trouble. Bottom line, that's what it is. She doesn't want to get in trouble, and if she does, then here comes the other personalities. And me looking at all of them just fight, I'm like, guys, it's gonna be okay. But I'll get into that later on. And I would say that when I found out that they were all living in me, that I would try to reassure them, but they wouldn't trust me. So then my protective side would come out, especially with my PTSD, and be very, very aggressive to anybody who showed any threat to me. Let it be psychological or physical. Anything threatening to me, she wanted to be a part of, and she was ready to. I'm a pacifist. I do not fight, but I do fight with words. But she comes out, and if she's not enough, and if she didn't get her point across, and if she feels that wasn't heard, then my ugly one comes out. And I don't want to call her ugly, but she's the most just negative one out of all of me. She starts saying very ugly things to me. I would have never wished to say to anybody, like, you're worthless, see, you can't take care of yourself. Yeah, you can only imagine what else. And I'm here as a passenger and seeing this family argue, and my child self is in the corner crying because she got hurt, and then my protective side feels now that she didn't do a good enough job, so she's angry, and then that negative side is just spewing just ugly words to me, and I'm stuck in my head. And now we have depression, now we have anxiety kicking in, my trauma, because trauma is already a whirlwind within itself, and I'm just so flustered, and I can't feel good enough, and I feel like I can't get out of that hole, and I feel like I'm not worthy of living, and all of these things. Me now, speaking to everybody who's watching this video, can say otherwise. I can honestly say that I am worth living. Do those little depressive thoughts come into my head? Yeah, but I'm able to be like, Alex, look the other way, because right now that is definitely not worth your time. You have depression, your ugly side feels kind of mad, but let's all sit down in a table and let's get this over with. This video, I feel, has been the hardest to make emotionally. I guess because I don't want people to see me as this person who is just very erratic, or this person who has issues and is an issue. Because my BPD, my borderline personality disorder, all it wants is for anybody not to abandon me. It wants to be loved. It wants for nobody to leave me. And what that looks like in situations is that I will try my best in any way for anybody not to leave me. That is our ultimate fear. Ultimately, you don't leave, and our fears become a reality. Even though that it could be a very positive relationship, healthy one, that your partner is really happy, but there's that constant fear that you're not good enough, that you'll never be good enough, you're not enough, period, you're not enough, nobody loves you, nobody will ever love you. It sounds like depression, but it's your reality. And I'm not saying that depression's not your reality. You just have so many voices telling you all at once that you're not loved. And I think that's what makes me even that much more afraid, because I don't want people thinking that I'm a malicious person, because I do everything out of the kindness of my heart. I really don't want people feeling like I feel, or I want people to feel as if somebody's there to understand them. That's the whole point why I'm doing this whole thing in the first place. I don't want people to feel excluded, because I know how that feels. I know how it feels to be lost and stuff like that. I don't want BPD to have a bad name, even though that I know it has a bad name, because a lot of people use it to demonize somebody. Oh, they have BPD, so they're very manipulative, they're very abusive. If anything, we try our hardest not to lose somebody, and there has to be an intervene of therapy so we can fully see what's a healthy way we can go about it. We don't manipulate people out of anger or pleasure. We just try our hardest so people won't leave us. We experience emotions so strongly, and I had always wondered why I was one of those people. I had always thought that it was just depression, because those are the mental illnesses you hear the most of. I always thought it was just my depression or my anxiety just going on top of that, right? And so when I had the trauma and I eventually got diagnosed, because when I was going to therapy, my therapist tried to do some PTSD exercises, tried obviously just very therapeutic stuff, and tried to make me understand what PTSD looked like, what the symptoms were, and stuff like that. And I guess she saw that it wasn't working for somebody who just had PTSD and depression and anxiety. So she had me reevaluated, and she made me take an exam that was for other mental illnesses, and it came down to that I have identity disorder and BPD. I still didn't understand what that was. But she had told me that she wouldn't be able to be my therapist anymore because in order to treat somebody with BPD, there has to be a specialist because there's different forms of handling somebody with BPD. Once I did find a therapist who was specialized for BPD, I can't even tell you how many times I had gone to a therapist's office and felt so out of place because I felt like they didn't care. And so having all of these things, like I'm not worthy enough, you know what, I shouldn't be doing this, my other therapist didn't like me enough, I can't trust anybody, like I can't trust her, you know, like that sounds like a lot, but that's exactly what's going on in your head. All these conflicting thoughts all at once, and your body is feeling all of it. I would be so drained after a therapy session when I first started. My body would be in pain. I would have to lay down on a couch because I felt everything. I felt triggers. I felt anxiety creeping in. I felt my BPD acting up. Like all of my voices started screaming at me, crying. I was a hot damn mess. When I first started a lot of things. Realizing what BPD symptoms look like. It's so weird to see yourself on a piece of paper. It's so weird to see that all of these things just clicked. Why my relationships were so chaotic. And not to say that my partner wasn't, but I was everywhere because I didn't want to get abandoned. I hated myself. I couldn't see myself as me. That's another thing. That's really scary. That's one of the scarier symptoms. When you look at yourself and it's not you. You get scared of your own reflection. Not saying you're ugly, but my own reflection would scare me. But I feel because it's not you. You lose contact with reality a lot of the time. Your head truly believes your own reality. That's very problematic when you're dealing with somebody else. And it sucks when you hit an ultimate low with paranoia. One of the things that I feel like I still do not as bad. That's why I opened up my own shop because for a period of time I was very impulsive when buying clothing. So if you ever want to buy something from my closet, I am posting up pictures on Instagram. Shameless plug-in, right? On Instagram, and I'm selling them on Depop as well. One of the things that I'm still struggling with is inappropriate sarcasm. I will never get into a physical fight. I won't act out of bitterness, but I have felt intense anger and I have lost my temper a lot of the time. And finally, suicide or self-harm. It was really intense when all of my diagnoses came at once and my whole life changed. That's when I started cutting the most, when I got into a relationship that was really happy, that I'd never been with somebody like that. When I had to move out in that transition, when I was alone in my apartment, I was so scared because of my PTSD. I was so paranoid on top of my borderline personality disorder, not finding the right therapist, feeling like I wasn't loved, feeling like I couldn't trust, friends constantly not being my friends, me feeling like I wasn't good enough for those friends who were my friends, who are my friends, me feeling like I abandoned my kids back home. And when I say my kids, it's my nieces and nephews. And not to mention that during all of this time, my body was in pain a lot of the time. I was still killing it at the gym, and I was still doing all of this stuff, going to school and having 2 jobs. I was still grinding at my life, but behind closed doors, I was just trying to figure it out. I am not my child self. I am not my adolescent self. I am not my young adult self. I'm not that negative part of myself. And I'm not my protective self. I am none of those things. They live with me. And I care for them. And I care for them to be respected. But they are not me. They are not me now. and they will never be me in the future, but they will always come with me. Just like with any mental illness, they'll always be by your side. It's a family who hasn't talked about issues, and that really needs to talk about them, because there's a lot to unpack. There's still memories in my head that we're still going through right now in therapy that haven't been uncovered, because one of them doesn't want to relive a certain part that's just blocked. And if you come across somebody who doesn't understand and is willing to understand, that's the best thing you can strive for. Please reach out if you need to anything that's going to benefit you. Healthy things, I'll get into those later. But I love you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye.